It's me, thinking out loud. I've been sitting with another question about AI music, and honestly, I didn't go looking for this one. It showed up after I started reconsidering whether the artist behind an AI generated song might have been there all along. Maybe not as the singer, maybe not as the voice, but as the person carrying the idea, the emotion, the words, or the need to create something. That possibility changed the way I was thinking about AI music, but it also created another problem. If the emotion belongs to the human, if the experience belongs to the human, if the original idea came from the human, but AI helps turn all of that into the finished song, whose work is it? If the feeling is mine, is the work mine? At first, that sounded like a question about ownership. But the more I sat with it, the more I realized it was also a question about authorship and responsibility, and maybe even honesty. Because saying something is mine can mean several different things. It can mean I started it, I shaped it, I directed it, I approved it, I released it. Or it can simply mean I liked what came back and decided to put my name on it. Those are not necessarily the same thing. And I'm beginning to think the distance between them matters. We usually associate creative ownership with the person who physically produces what we experience. The singer sings, the writer writes, the musician plays, the painter paints. There is a visible connection between the person and the work. But even that has never been as simple as we sometimes pretend it is. A singer can perform lyrics written by someone else. A songwriter may never sing the song they wrote. A producer can reshape the entire sound. Musicians can interpret the same composition differently. An editor can completely change the rhythm of a story without having written the original words. So creative work has always been layered. There has often been more than one person involved in bringing something to life. But with AI, some of those layers are harder to see. A person may begin with a memory, or a sentence, or a feeling they have been carrying for years. They may know exactly what they want the song to say, but not know how to turn that feeling into music. So they describe it, they generate something, they listen, they change the words, they change the mood, they reject one version, then another and another, until something finally sounds close to what they were hearing inside themselves. Is that authorship? I think it might be. But then I have to ask, how much of the work came from the person and how much came from the system? Was the human shaping the song? Or was the human selecting from possibilities the system created? And does selection count as creation? It certainly can. We select words when we write. We select images when we design. We select what stays and what gets removed. Choice is part of the creative process. But is choosing the same as making? I don't know. And maybe that question becomes harder because AI doesn't behave like the tools we're accustomed to using. A piano does not suggest a new chorus. A microphone does not rewrite a lyric. A paintbrush does not look at the canvas and offer a completely different composition. Traditional tools help us carry out a decision. AI can introduce decisions of its own, or at least something that feels like decisions. It can suggest words I did not write. It can create a melody I did not hear in my head. It can change the tone. It can produce something unexpected that sends the entire piece in a new direction. And sometimes that unexpected contribution may be the part that makes the work better. That is where the word tool begins to feel insufficient. Because when the tool begins adding something, when it begins influencing the direction, when it creates possibilities the human did not imagine, does it start becoming a collaborator? But collaborator feels strange too. A collaborator understands that we are working together. A collaborator brings intention. A collaborator may disagree with me. A collaborator can explain why they made a choice. AI cannot do that in the human sense. It can generate a sad song without ever having felt sadness. It can write about grief without losing anyone. It can create a lyric about faith without believing in anything. So even when it contributes something meaningful, it does not understand the meaning the way the human does. That makes this relationship difficult to name. It may be more than a passive tool, but it is not a creative partner in the way another human would be. So what is it? Maybe the real question is not whether AI deserves to be called an artist. Maybe the question is how much human authorship remains when the system begins supplying parts of the work the human could not have produced alone. And I don't think there is one answer that fits every situation. I keep coming back to the difference between two people using the same technology. One person might type a vague sentence into a system. Write me a song about heartbreak. The system produces something. The person listens once, accepts it, gives it a title, and releases it. Another person might begin with something they actually lived. They may write the lyrics themselves. They may know the exact emotion they are trying to capture. They may change every line the system offers. They may generate 20 versions of the voice, the tempo, and the arrangement before one finally feels true. Both songs may be called AI generated, but I don't experience those creative processes as identical. One may be mostly generation. The other may be human expression made possible through technology. And yet, from the outside, we may never know which one we are hearing. That matters to me. Because when someone says, I made this, I want to understand what made means. Did they carry the story? Did they write the words? Did they direct the emotion? Did they shape the final result? Or did they simply request something and accept what appeared? I'm not saying one has no value. I'm saying they are different. And maybe our language has not caught up with the difference yet. We use one label, AI generated, to describe an enormous range of human involvement. That label can make deeply directed creative work appear effortless. And it can also make effortless generation appear deeply authored. Neither seems completely honest. Then I started thinking about credit. If an AI generated song connects with people, who receives the praise? The person who prompted it? The person who wrote the lyrics? The person who shaped the voice? The company that created the system? The system itself? Most likely, the human who released it will accept the credit. They will say it is their song, their project, their creative vision. And maybe that is appropriate. But ownership becomes more complicated when the result causes harm. What happens if the song imitates a real person's voice? What happens if the lyrics falsely describe someone? What happens if the work includes something offensive, misleading, or cruel? What happens if the creator releases it without fully examining what the system produced? AI cannot apologize. It cannot explain what it meant. It cannot stand in front of the person who was harmed and take responsibility. It cannot say, I should have known better. The human can. And that made me realize something. Maybe ownership is not determined only by who receives the praise. Maybe ownership is also revealed by who remains when something goes wrong. That is a less comfortable way to think about authorship, because it means I cannot claim the emotional truth of the work while distancing myself from the consequences of the final result. I cannot say, those were my feelings when people love it, and then say, the AI did that when they don't. Well, I could. People probably will. But I'm not sure that makes it honest. If I bring a personal story into the process, if I direct the system, if I choose what stays, if I decide which version sounds right, if I place my name on it and release it into the world, then I have participated in creating the outcome, even if I did not produce every word, even if I could not sing the notes, even if the system contributed something I never would have imagined on my own. That does not mean I controlled everything. Human creators have never controlled every interpretation of their work. People hear things differently. They bring their own memories, their own pain, their own beliefs. But there is a difference between not controlling how someone receives the work and refusing responsibility for what I chose to release. If I accept authorship, I may also have to accept accountability. Not because I personally created every sound, but because I decided that this was the sound I was willing to stand behind. Maybe that is part of what makes the work mine. Not only that the feeling began with me, not only that I shaped it, but that I am willing to remain attached to it after it leaves me. When people praise it, when they question it, when they misunderstand it, and when they point out something I should have seen before I released it. That kind of ownership is heavier than putting a name on a song, but maybe it is also more meaningful. So I come back to the question I started with. If the feeling is mine, is the work mine? Maybe. But I don't think the feeling alone is enough. A feeling can start the work. It can give the work meaning. It can make the work personal. But authorship may also live in the choices. How much did I shape? How much did I question? How much did I revise? How much of myself did I actually bring into the process? And am I willing to be responsible for what came out of it? Maybe ownership is not a simple yes or no. Maybe it exists on a spectrum. At one end, a person asks a system for something vague, accepts the first result, and puts their name on it. At the other end, someone brings their own words, experiences, memories, and creative direction, then uses AI to express something they could not otherwise bring to life. Both involve AI, but I don't think they involve the same degree of authorship. And somewhere between those two ends is this uncomfortable question about when the tool becomes something more. When does assistance become collaboration? When does selection become creation? When does the person using the system become the author? And if the system contributed something essential, how transparent should the human be about that? Maybe saying, I made this is no longer enough. Maybe we need to become more precise about what we mean. I wrote this. I directed this. I shaped this. I generated this. I selected this. I used AI to give this a voice. Those statements reveal different relationships to the finished work. And perhaps the most honest answer is not always the simplest one. If I supplied the truth and AI supplied the voice, whose work is it? If I accept the credit, am I also prepared to accept the responsibility? And when does a tool stop feeling like a tool and begin feeling like something else? I don't have that settled yet. Yeah, I'm still thinking out loud.